ask Gary to come forward, please, for the eulogy. You can all be seated for a few moments, please.
I don't know why I volunteered to do these things, but a lot of Mom's friends have passed. She was outliving everyone. At one point, we were going to put her in have her in our wills. I said that backwards. Anyway, so I didn't have it written down. So, my mother came to this church for many years, St. Joseph's, until her failing eyesight forced her to stop driving. After that, family members and friends would occasionally take her to church, and her granddaughter Chrissy and I would take her to Christmas Mass. In more recent years, Mom would listen to Mass on TV with my brother Joe. Although Mom was largely independent in most areas throughout her long life, Joe helped Mom a lot, especially after her eyesight failed, cooking for her, helping her with the bills, and so on. My brother Tim and my wife Judy were there for Mom as well, as were her grandchildren and their spouses, her nephews and niece. They all loved Mom a lot, and it showed. We had the best family, the best friends, and they were with Mom in her dying days as well. There are so many truly wonderful things I could say about Mom. Mom lived for almost 101 years. That's a lot of life to contemplate. Mom worked long before it was the norm for a woman to work outside the home. Starting in 1943, when she was just 18, she worked for the Navy during World War II. When my brothers and I were in grade school, Mom worked as a school secretary at St. Peter's, and later on she was the secretary for the parish pastor. She then spent 20 years working for the federal government as a spy for the CIA. Wait, that should have been redacted. U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Sure, let's call it that. After Mom retired, she had part-time jobs off and on well into her 90s, late 90s. She also spent many, many hours helping to raise her grandchildren over the years. I can't possibly touch on all of Mom's century of accomplishments, and my time is limited here. So I want to focus on what I believe was the core of Mom's strength and goodness. Mom always put others' needs above her own. We kidded her a lot about her worrying too much, but we also concluded that her concern for others, especially family, is part of what helped keep her alive all those years. And in her 90s, when we would beg her to stop worrying so much, she would exclaim, "Well, it's worked for me this far." And no one could argue with that. I wasn't sure what I would say today, but I wanted to honor Mom as best I could. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote the following, which I hope represents the selfless person that Mom was. When our son Casey died 20 years ago, at the beginning of his memorial service, when the first song came on, I completely lost it. I was literally sobbing in the pew. Suddenly, out of the corner of my tear-filled eyes, I saw Mom rushing up from across the aisle and a couple of rows back. Then she was bending down next to my seat by the aisle. I looked at her and she was holding something in her hand and she said, "Would you like a Tic Tac?" Bewildered, I shook my head no. Now, I had never had a Tic Tac in my life, something I just assumed my mother of 52 years at the time would have somehow known. In any case, she had successfully ended my sobbing spree. 10 minutes later, I was up giving Casey's eulogy. The very first thing I said was, I was really starting to lose it there until Mom brought me a Tic Tac. Everyone laughed. Later, when I questioned Mom about her Tic Tac offer, she said, "I just knew you'd do something with it." So on that day, one of the hardest days of my life, my mother was not only the compassionate, caring mom she had always been, but apparently she was also my straight man. Mom would have wanted us to laugh today. Her granddaughters, my wonderful nieces, told us that Mom had told them she wanted a party when she passed. She didn't want people to be sad. But we can do both, be sad and have some laughs. I've heard other people say similar things, like, "Don't be sad when I'm gone." But if people aren't sad when we're gone, it doesn't say much about the way we lived. Personally, I would like people to be sobbing in the aisles when I'm gone. But hey, that's just me. Anyway, the simple Tic Tac story exemplifies who Mom was in a nutshell. She was the most caring, concerned, empathetic, not and pathetic, empathetic, loving mother to myself and my two brothers that anyone could have asked for. And she was all of those things and more to each of her relatives and friends. Mom and Dad always had a host of friends. My brothers and I had cool parents. All of our friends over the years would tell us that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention how much Mom and Dad loved each other. They were married 40 years when Dad died in 1988. And so it seems fitting that Mom died on January 29th on what would have been Mom and Dad's 78th anniversary. So Mom spent her last 38 years as a widow. Dad had been such a huge part of her life, but Mom courageously carried on. A number of years after Dad passed, I mentioned to Mom how strong she had been when Dad died. And that day, she confided in me that she had cried herself to sleep the first couple of years after Dad died. And that was Mom, always strong for us, for others. I talked to my mother almost every day of my life. And in this past month since she passed, I can't tell you how many times I've thought to myself, I should call Mom, but I couldn't. I won't miss talking to you, Mom. Even though it would sometimes frustrate me when I needed to get off the phone. Okay, I have to go now, Mom. If I don't get off the phone right now, I'll be late for my open heart surgery or whatever. It didn't matter. She would say, okay, dear, and then she would immediately start another conversation. Mom wasn't perfect. Nobody is. But she was as good a human being as I've ever met. You done good, Mom. 100 years, and you were sharp as a tack for almost the entirety of that century you spent here on earth. You lived a good, long life, and you loved as well as anyone can in this world, and nothing is more important than that. You were a huge success, Mom. We will always love you, and I know you'll be there for us whenever we think of you and miss you, which will be often. And Mom, FYI, I have still never had a Tic Tac.